I'm Jeanette Keynes from Jewelry Arts Inc. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to make and fit a curved bezel down into a ring shank.
It's a lot of buttons. So we're getting ready to start this project. So this is our progress so far, basically. We're going to do a hammer down setting for this lovely stone, you see, which when you do a normal bezel for a cabochon, it's like 1/3 of the stone is in, 2/3 is out. For a hammer down, you basically reverse it. It's going to be 2/3 in and 1/3 out, and then we're going to hammer the bezel around, and I'll show you all of that when we get there. But where we are now is we want to fit this down into the shank. Okay, so we're going to have to cut a section out of here. So what we normally do, because you'll never get the ring beautiful and round and to the right size without soldering it shut first, we solder it shut first. We're not going to bother to clean up the seam like super extra beautiful because we're going to chop it out anyway. So right now we're at the stage that the ring fits, you know, your finger really nicely, soldered shut. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take your bezel, and sometimes what I'll do is I'll take a little bit of red wax and stick it on here, but I think in this case I'm actually just going to hold it with my finger. You sure you want to do it the other way?
That's what I thought, but I'm not sure.
Well, here's the thing. The reason is this. Basically, the wider the stone is that you fit down in there, the more troublesome it is.
Yeah, okay.
Do you know what I'm saying? So for your first one, like, yes, of course we can, but I would recommend going like so.
Yep.
So what I've done, you see, is I'm positioning the bezel just over the seam. I'm going to hold it in place, and I'm going to mark it with a Sharpie on both sides. And I'm not trying to make it perfectly equidistant because it doesn't really matter because we're just going to saw it out. See what I mean? I just put a mark on both sides. Ta-da! Like so. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to have you saw on the inside of those lines. Because the key is this, we have to saw this section out, and then we're gonna have to file or use a burr or whatever we can find, basically to make this shape curve exactly to the side of this. So this is different for every bezel because basically you're making an opening that fits this exactly. We're also going to curve the bottom of this and put a back sheet on it, which we'll do that later. But for the moment, go ahead and saw this out. So you see what I mean? Okay? So you're gonna saw, like, let's say, you know what I mean, right here on both sides. Okay? Then I'll come back and we'll do a little lesson on how to put the curve in here to match this, because we're also gonna take this, curve it to the right size, which is 9.5, right? That we were at?
Yep.
In theory. We had a little trouble before. Math failed. I'm like, I did it with the math and it was wrong. And I'm like, but I know how to do this. I've done it before. And then we did it by eye and it was right. So we got there in the end. So we're just gonna roll with it. But basically I'll show you how to put the curve in here and then we'll solder a curved back sheet on here. Okay? So we have a section of this out, which is good now, because the rest of this we're going to refine with the curve of this. After I throw it on the floor. Thank you. So, and you did this basically just right, which is, you know, it'll go in there maybe a hair at the top, but not at the bottom because we're going to have to put all that curve in. But before I truly start taking this and fitting it in there and shaping it, we're going to put the curve in here and solder a back sheet on. Okay, just stiffen this up because you don't want to be trying this when you don't have anything soldered on the bottom, because then it's much more likely to just get squished rather than to be able to fit it in there. So what we have to do when you want to get a curve in something that matches this, normally what we do is throw it on the floor. This is definitely going in the blooper reel. Basically, we need to find like a dowel or a rod that fits right inside here. And we're gonna tape some sandpaper on there, and then that way we take this and you sand it back and forth. But you don't necessarily have to put the whole curve in that way, but that's a really good way to do like the fine tuning and make sure the curve really matches this exactly. Because a lot of times what I'll do is I'll start just by marking it roughly with a Sharpie, and we'll file a lot of it away. Do you know what I'm saying? So that you don't end up taking every bit away with the sandpaper, which can get like, you know what I mean? Real slow. Okay. Because if I take this and hold it up against here, you can kind of get a sense of how much we're going to have to take off of here to make it fit down in. Okay? Because it's basically the distance from here to here. So like, I usually just start with something like that, in other words. And we'll start with a large half round file. Okay, like so. And I usually don't use the bench pin, but if you're going to use the bench pin, you see what I mean? And I'll start putting the curve in. The sandpaper on the dowel will give you an exact beautiful curve and match, but I usually think it's faster to kind of like file some of it out of there and then refine with the sandpaper. So basically start your curve with this. You see what I mean? How that starts to curve. And then let's find something that fits inside here. We'll tape a little like 400 sandpaper on there, because then we can refine this right on there to make sure we get a really beautiful curve. And then we'll take our back sheet and we'll bend it around whatever we found to fit in there. That way you know they're going to fit together really nicely. Don't look convinced, but it's going to work. So just to show, look how perfect this is. So you find something that fits right inside there. We'll tape the sandpaper on here, and that way we'll take our bezel, we'll slide it back and forth to really refine the shape and make sure we're getting that same beautiful curve in there. Because it wouldn't do to have a mismatch between the curve of the inside of your ring and the curve on the inside of your bezel. It would not do. Can't have that. Okay, once again. So this is what I was talking about before. We took that dowel that fit right in the ring shank. We wrapped some 400 sandpaper around it. We kind of started the curve just a bit with a file. And then to really get it to match, basically you're going to go back and forth on here. Because what you're looking to do, the bottom of this is going to then match this curve, which will then match your ring. It's all fit together, all beautiful. Okay? So keep going until you see this, you know, smooth sanded line all the way around, and then we'll check it, you know, up against maybe the bare dowel to make sure, you know, that the curve matches really nicely. Okay? So what we were talking about before is now we're going to solder this to a back sheet. The bottom of this is now a lovely curve, the same curve as the inside of our ring, which of course we'll find out for sure once we try to put it on the back sheet. So if there's a little more finessing that needs to be done, we will do it, no problem. And what I was saying before is, even though this is a regular like 26 gauge bezel, when we have to fit this down in here, we're going to be like forcing it in and out to make sure it fits really well. If we don't have a really thick, strong back sheet on here, this is just going to crush, you know what I mean, because this is so thick. So we got some 18 gauge sterling as the back sheet. So we got a nice big piece of it. We annealed it and pickled it.
Yes.
Did
For
not
sure.
look very certain.
Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So what I'm going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to bend it to the same curve, size 9.5. So I'm going to just start it on here. And move that out of the way. And I'm just going to give it a good whomp. Like that.
It was easy.
I told you I was going to give it a big whomp. And I mean, we may shape it a little bit and tweak it a little bit, but basically that's how we're getting a curve, the same curve as the inside of our ring. 9.5, 9.5, we're going to match it up. You know what I mean? Because, and if you look at this, and you look at this, see what I'm saying? So we'll tweak it a little bit, but basically that's how you do that. That's why you basically have to start with your ring size, and then everything else builds outward from there. Okay, so we'll bend that a little bit. That's really not bad. Not bad at all. I should do this for a living. See what I mean? So I'll bend it a little bit more, but this will then be soldered.
Perfect.
You see what I'm saying?
Perfection.
Right? Look at that. That's good. It's all very, very good. Now, the reason why I didn't just cut you a much smaller piece is because if you imagine taking that really little piece and trying to hold on to that little fucker and trying to get that bend in it, it is much easier to take a bigger piece like this and lay it in there and smack it, okay? And actually, it fits and life is good, so we're done, which is weird, but that worked. That worked. Usually takes a little more.
Let's solder it now, just like that.
Yeah, we're gonna set this up on a tripod, and we'll do it together. But we're gonna ball up some hard solder, which is the red. We're gonna put it in here with some paste box. We're gonna like from underneath, you know what I mean? Nice big tip because this is big and thick. We can also saw some of this off before we solder it so that it'll go a little faster. But essentially, that's it. A nice curved bottom, but it's nice and thick, so it'll give this a lot more rigidity.
Cool.
All right?
All right.
So it looks good. It's sitting on there. I don't really see any light or anything. When you're doing something this, also remember, you know, it's okay if there's a tiny bit of light, but you can't have like big gaps. Because sometimes people are like, I don't know, I think I see some light. And it's like, it's not gonna be blackout dark in there. You know what I mean? You're just looking that you don't have like any really big gaps that are gonna make your soldering go funky. So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put some paste flux in there. I'm gonna kind of dry it a little bit. And I'm gonna plop a bunch of these balls from underneath. We're gonna use a nice big fat tip because remember this back sheet is like big and thick. And hot and fast always is always what you wanna do when you solder. Also fun, so. I'm just gonna make sure there's a little solder, or a little flux rather, on the outside because we wanna make sure the solder wants to kind of run out there. I'm just gonna dry this so that it holds it a little better so that it doesn't wiggle around as much. And people always ask, when you dry, do you go from the top, do you go from the bottom? It really doesn't make any difference. It's just a matter of not going in for the kill too fast, because what you're hopefully trying to do is gently dry it so everything doesn't, you know, move around. I don't always have all the patience I need to perfectly do that, but we try. So I'm just gonna heat it until the flux kind of settles down a little bit, and then I'm gonna drop my solder in there. And if this were flat, honestly, I wouldn't even bother to do the drying the flux and then adding the solder. I would just throw it all in there and dry it and go. But it's a little fussier because it's sitting on top of that little hump, so. Our beautiful little hump that we deliberately made. And it doesn't really matter where these solder balls end up, as long as they're up against the edge of the bezel and touching the back sheet. When they get hot, they'll flow around the seam. So don't get too caught up in obsessionally trying to place them all perfectly equidistant around there, because it doesn't actually matter that much. So once I get these all in here, I'll just let you take a nice little overhead shot. Now, I think I would have been a little more aggressive and made my solder balls a little bit bigger, but it doesn't matter. I'm just going to add a few extra ones. I don't know, maybe I'll put one more piece in there, and then I'll let Alexis get a nice overhead shot. And I want you to come and take a look and see what I mean. But basically, I mean, this is really just normal soldering operation. Paste flux, little solder balls. We're gonna heat the crap out of it for much. And you know, remember when you're soldering also, and especially when you're working on a tripod, I'm not really looking inside to watch and see if the solder's flowing. I'm watching out here. When I see a flow around here, that's all I care about. Because lots of people are like, they're heating and they're trying to get their nose like directly over top, which can be a really unpleasant combination of things. Don't do that. Because it almost doesn't matter what's happening in there. You're watching for it to flow around that outside seam. If it's not flowing around that outside seam, you know what I mean, looking at it from the top isn't going to help you. So normally, I mean, I'm here and I'm looking, but I'm not going to be doing that. Flux is probably not the healthiest thing for us to inhale, and also having a torch pointed right at your face is also not good. So don't do that. Yeah. Oh, there we go. When you solder, you want that nice hard hiss. Okay? So I put the flame directly underneath. Do not dick around. Do not try to heat the whole piece. Don't keep the flame moving. Just position it directly underneath. And watch what happens. Oh, look at that.
Wow.
Do you see what I mean? That's why you just really want to watch the outside edge. Don't do the thing over top. Because that's what I do, is I just watch. When I see it travel all the way around, now I'll let Alexis get a close-up view of that, but that to me looks completely filled in and beautiful and fabulous. But we'll let it cool and we'll pickle it, and of course if there were to be any little pinholes or whatever, we would just add a little bit more solder. Okay? Hot and fast, just like do not fuck around from underneath and then get the hell out. You know what I mean? Okay? So let it cool, pickle it, and we'll take a good look at it and we'll make sure that everything is filled in. So here we go, extreme close up. You see how that's all filled in and beautiful and gorgeous? I'll flip it around so you can see the other side. But that looks really good. There you go. So you can really see how it's all filled in. Okay, so just saw away the excess and we'll file and everything. And you know, we've got to like sand the top of the bezel. It's got a little like funky stuff happening over here. You know what I mean? We got to clean that all up and make it all smooth and pretty. All right? So look at that. Basically, sawed it out from the back sheet, all pretty, very nice. And now it's getting all filed. So you have like just a tiny bit more to do, but you're almost there. You see, beautiful. Got that nice curve in there that matches our ring. So we're gonna get this all cleaned up. And then basically next time what we'll do is, now that we have this all gorgeous and as it should be, we're gonna start filing or grinding this out until we get a nice match with this, okay? And I'm not gonna lie to you, that is not the most fun stage of this project.
Yep.
In my opinion, and in everyone's opinion who's ever done one of these rings, that's the part that's super fucking aggravating. Because you have to match the curve from the top, and you also have to get the angle right from the side, which we'll go through it together, we'll do it together. It's just a little aggravating. Remember, better out than in. Just let the swear words come, you'll feel better. But that's our next mission then. We'll get that to fit
You have to
right
curve
in there
that
tight.
out, right? The
So-
that has to end up getting, no?
This, we already did that. So we already have a beautiful curve
Oh, you
there.
have the curve.
And
Yeah,
we
yeah,
soldered
I
the
can
back
see
sheet.
that,
So
yeah.
that's already all done.
Uh-huh.
So now we've got to get to this too, so that we can just press it down in there. It has to go in there, but it can't go in there loose. You know what I mean? It has to be a nice tight fit. It's going to be super fun, and you're going to love this stage.
Cool.
I did one of those.
Yeah.
Not here.